Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going over my top 20 wide receiver rankings and tiers for the 2023 fantasy football season in PPR. Now, we already went over my top 12 wide receiver rankings and tiers in a previous video, so we're going to gloss over them in today's video, the top 12, and the video is more focused on wide receivers 13 through 20. Before we can get on into things, though, if you are new to the channel, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below, and whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure to leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my top 20 wide receiver rankings and tiers for the 2023 fantasy football season in PPR. We begin with the S-tier wide receivers. These are my top 4 wide receivers for the 2023 fantasy football season. At number 1, we have Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings. Number 2, Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals. Number 3, Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins. And number 4, Cooper Kupp of the LA Rams. Now, I believe that all 4 of these wide receivers are incredibly safe. As long as there is no injury to any of these players, they could all easily be top 5 wide receivers in the 2023 fantasy football season. And while they are incredibly safe, they also all have the upside to be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football. I think if there was any wide receiver this year, or multiple wide receivers this year, that eclipse 2,000 plus receiving yards, it would be one of these 4 guys. Justin Jefferson is so heavily utilized in the Minnesota Vikings offense. This is an offense that has kind of turned the page on the past, where they were more run heavy. They love to throw the rock, and Justin Jefferson is the clear alpha in this Viking system. Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals, obviously on one of the best offenses in the NFL, with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. We have seen ever since this man stepped foot in the NFL out of LSU, he has been dominating defenses 50 Shades of Grey style, and there is no reason to believe that is going to stop in 2023. Tyreek Hill, in the second year of the Mike McDaniel system, Tua Tagovailoa, when healthy, was throwing lasers to Tyreek Hill. He's a much better deep ball passer than people give him credit for, and I think that Tyreek Hill is set up to have yet another monster season. And to close out the S tier again, Cooper Kupp. It seems like everyone's just forgetting how good Cooper Kupp was, right? You remember, not last year, but the year prior, Cooper Kupp was the best wide receiver in fantasy football, the Triple Crown winner, the clear best wide receiver in the fucking NFL. Last year, he was the number 1 wide receiver in terms of points per game, and yet people are drafting him at the 10th, 11th, or 12th pick in some drafts. Stop sleeping on Cooper Kupp. I know it might be obvious to some of you, but the ADP tells us that it feels like people forgot just how great Cooper Kupp is. Moving to the next tier here, the A tier guys, a step down from S tier. We got Stefon Diggs as well as Devonta Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, Stefon Diggs, similar argument to Jamar Chase, right? He's on one of the best offenses in the NFL with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, obviously, it seemed like there was a bit of trouble in paradise going on with the Buffalo Bills early on in the offseason, right? Did Diggs actually want to continue to play with the Buffalo Bills? Obviously, that's all been ironed out at this point. Diggs is going to be there. Diggs is happy to be there. They don't really bring in any other weapons. Sure, they draft Dalton Kincaid to be their quote-unquote number 1 tight end, but that doesn't move the needle. That's not going to make you nervous about Stefon Diggs. He's the clear alpha on a great offense. Devonta Adams, I see him ranked sometimes as low as wide receiver 10, and it seems like people are just discrediting him, right? Sure, I get he's going from Derek Carr to Jimmy Garoppolo, but Devonta Adams was stunting on defenses when Jared Stidham was under center for the Raiders last year. So even with Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy G-Spot, Jimmy Pornstar under center, I have zero worries in Devonta Adams finishing outside of the top 10 at wide receiver. I think that the Raiders offense is going to be pretty solid, and I think Devonta Adams is going to be the focal point in this offense. It seems to be like people just forgot that Devonta Adams is one of the best wide receivers, if not the best receiver in the NFL. Moving to the B tier, we got CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver 7 of the Dallas Cowboys. At 8, we have A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles. And at number 9, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown has been someone that I have been banging the drum aggressively for all offseason long. I've been the conductor of the Amon-Ra St. Brown hype train. Early on in the season, for the first 6 games, they're going to be without Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams is really the only other option they have to throw the ball to their team in terms of wide receivers. So for the first 6 games, Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be peppered Salt Bae style with targets. And then after that, he's still going to be the #1 wide receiver on an offense that has gotten significantly better. I think Jared Goff is kind of being discredited with how good he actually is. I think Jared Goff is much better than people think. I think this Lions offense is going to be chef's kiss, Manufweek. I'm excited about Amon-Ra St. Brown. CeeDee Lamb, still the #1 wide receiver in Dallas. We all know the Dallas Cowboys are some playoff chokers, but fantasy football is played during the regular season, and you better believe Dak is going to be dialed in this season. A.J. Brown, the 1A to Devonta Smith's 1B in Philadelphia. He gets traded from the Titans last year, and obviously he's amazing in Philadelphia. Who would have guessed a great wide receiver going from the Titans would be great in Philadelphia, right? What a shock. Is a team that, while they do like to run the ball, while Jalen Hurts is a great runner, he's also a great passer, and I think that all 3 of these guys deserve the fame, the clout, you might say, of being B-tier wide receivers. I love all of these guys. There really only starts to be nerves in my rankings once we get a little bit deeper, and I will point that out. Moving now to the C tier, we have Jalen waddled away, waddle, till the very next day of the Miami Dolphins, as well as Garrett Wilson of the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, Jalen Waddle is the 1B to Tyreek Hill's 1A, but if I'm being honest with you, I don't think anyone should be shocked in the slightest if Jalen Waddle somehow outscores Tyreek Hill. These are both wide receivers that are key pieces inside the offense. Jalen Waddle could take a 4-yard slant to the fucking crib, 80 yards. He is incredible in terms of speed. His hands were a little bit shaky last season as a Dolphins fan in the playoffs when he dropped that bomb that Skylar Thompson threw to him. It was right in his hands. He should have caught it. It was probably going to be a touchdown. He drops it. There were drops all of last season, and it sucked. But again, if Tua's able to stay healthy, man, the upside is the moon for these Dolphins wide receivers. Garrett Wilson of the Jets, again, my wide receiver number 11. Earlier on in the offseason, I started to worry about Garrett Wilson. I started to worry about the fact that maybe Aaron Rodgers isn't just going to key in on Garrett Wilson because Garrett Wilson isn't his quote-unquote guy, right? We all know that Aaron Rodgers likes to have that Jedi mind trick. He likes to have that chemistry with the wide receivers, but ultimately, outside of Garrett Wilson, sure, they have some other wide receivers of name, right? You know who they are, but none of them are on the skill of Garrett Wilson, so I feel pretty confident in Garrett Wilson. I think Aaron Rodgers isn't going to go back to being the discount double check back-to-back Michael Jordan 96-97 MVP that he was a couple years ago, but I still think he is an incredible quarterback. And then we move to the D tier where we start to get to the real analysis here. Number 12, we got T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals. If something was to happen to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins would instantly catapult himself into probably a top 5, top 6 wide receiver in my rankings every single week. And if Jamar Chase stays healthy, T. Higgins is going to be somewhere from wide receiver 12 through 18 every single week. He's the 1B to Jamar Chase's 1A. This is a great offense that he's in. We've seen T. Higgins turn up. He would be the #1 wide receiver on a lot of teams in the NFL. It just turns out that Jamar Chase is also on the team, so he's moved down to the quote-unquote #2 receiver on the Bengals. The real analysis begins with Devonta Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles, current underdog ADP wide receiver 13 at pick 21.5. Last year was the wide receiver 9 in PPR and the wide receiver 14 in PPR points per game, tied with Mike Evans. He played in all 17 games, finishing inside the top 15 in all major categories. 136 targets, 8 per game, number 13, 95 receptions, 5.6 per game, number 9, 1,196 receiving yards, 70.4 per game, number 8, and 7 total touchdowns, 14th at wide receiver. He had the 20th highest dominator rating at the wide receiver position and the 3rd highest juke rate. The Slim Reaper is back yet again for potentially another huge season. It feels as though, I kind of talked about this with A.J. Brown, right? So many people want to shit down Jalen Hurts' throat, right? They want to say Jalen Hurts is a running back. It's the same thing they did to Lamar. Sure, I get when it's a joke, when people are fucking around, but at the end of the day, I think some people are serious with that. They think that Jalen Hurts is this running back. He can't throw the ball. well then how the hell did A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith destroy defenses last year? It's because Jalen Hurts is a really good passer. This is a loaded offense, a great offensive line with a great quarterback. Everything you want for a wide receiver to succeed. If A.J. Brown wasn't here, Devonta Smith would probably be moved up all the way to probably right where A.J. Brown is sitting at the wide receiver number 8. Again, an excellent wide receiver, an excellent separator, a speedster, and very worthy of a back half of the second or early third round draft pick. Number 14, we have Chris Olave, still in the D tier. He was a guy that I've been a little nervous about all offseason, but I can't rank him lower than this because I recognize that the upside is just so incredibly high with Chris Olave. He's the wide receiver 12 off the board on Underdog Fantasy right now at pick 19.2. But before we break down Chris Olave and these other wide receivers some more, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, if you are new to Underdog Fantasy, they're the best place to play best ball fantasy football this summer. If you don't know what best ball is, it's the best part about fantasy football. It's the draft, and that's it. There's no waivers, no trades, and no setting your lineup. At the end of every single week, Underdog automatically puts the highest scores into your lineup for you. I think it's the best place to mock draft because you have to put money into it so people actually care. There's no more drafting some kicker in the third round of your mock drafts because people actually care. They have these big tournaments like Best Ball Mania 4, $25 to enter, 150 max entries, $15 million in total prizes, $3 million to first place. They also have smaller contests like the Puppy, only $5 to enter over on Underdog Fantasy. But they also have regular kind of almost redraft type of leagues, right? Where it's just you versus 11 other people. $3 is the lowest entry point on there. And I think that Underdog Fantasy is going to continue to grow. I play on there all the time. If you want to join Underdog Fantasy or if you got any questions, leave them in the comments. If you want to sign up, link in the video description or in the pinned comment. Promo code Notorious will get you a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. So you deposit 100, additional 100, 50, additional 50, 25, and additional 25. Again, make sure you guys check that out. Link in the video description. So back to Chris Olave. Again, I was a little bit nervous about him, and I still am. I'm going to be honest. I talk about this a bunch. If Michael Thomas stays healthy, Michael Thomas is a complete and utter fucking steal where he's going right now. Deep, balls deep in drafts, and Chris Olave might end up being a big fat bust. But Michael Thomas can't ever stay healthy, so I can't just say that it's a guarantee that's going to happen because I'm going to end up with pie on my face if I say that that's guaranteed to happen because Chris Olave is so good, and if Thomas gets hurt or Thomas is just in and out of these games, Olave is going to be amazing. Wide receiver 25 in PPR in his rookie year, 27 in PPR points per game. He had 119 targets, 7.9 per game, number 20, 72 receptions, 4.8 per game, number 26, 1,042 receiving yards, 69.5 per game, number 17, 4 total touchdowns, 37th, 12th in route win rate, as well as 18th in fantasy points per route run. Chris Olave had to deal with a bunch of bullshit at quarterback last year. He had Taysom Hill, he had Jameis Winston, he had Andy Dalton, right? There was a quarterback kind of carousel going on in New Orleans. I don't love Derek Carr, but let's be honest, Derek Carr is a clear step up over those guys. If Olave plays the whole season and Thomas gets banged up, Olave has that top 5 wide receiver upside. He is an incredible route runner, a great deep threat for the New Orleans Saints, and I think if Derek Carr is just what Derek Carr was, maybe not last year, but in seasons prior, you're going to be really excited to have drafted Chris Olave. There's just something inside of me that fears that Michael Thomas somehow stays healthy and Chris Olave ends up being a bust. Moving now to the E tier, right? These are all guys that I'm pretty confident in. Again, even though I don't love Chris Olave, I'm still pretty excited to draft him. Now we move into the range where things start to get a little bit scary. Amari Cooper of the Cleveland Browns, underdog ADP, wide receiver 17 at pick 33.1. Now I love Amari Cooper, but I think that most people, most fantasy football players, this is where they start to get a little bit sweaty. Their knees are weak, their arms are fucking heavy, like they're Eminem, okay? Underdog ADP, wide receiver 17, pick 33.1. Wide receiver 10 in PPR, 18 in PPR points per game. He played in all 17 games last season. 132 targets, 7.8 per game, number 16. 78 receptions, 4.6 per game, number 18. 1,160 receiving yards, 68.2 per game, number 11. And 9 total touchdowns, 4th at wide receiver. 870 unrealized air yards, 3rd, and a 39.3% dominator rating, 3rd. They bring in Elijah Moore, but I don't think that really affects Amari Cooper too much because Look, I think Elijah Moore is an interesting pick in fantasy drafts, but the guy just hasn't done shit at the NFL level. They have DPJ, they have David Njoku, they got 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. My reason why I like Amari Cooper so much is this guy played great last season with Jacoby Brissett and what felt like the fucking corpse of Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson looked terrible last season. My belief in Amari Cooper is that he had, again, the third most unrealized air yards, so the passes thrown his way just weren't the best, right? If Deshaun Watson comes back this season and plays not even like the Deshaun Watson that was potential MVP, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Remember that duel with him and Pat Mahomes, right? It was amazing. But last year, the guy looked like a limp dick, right? Like he needed Viagra in those games. He looked terrible. He looked like he shouldn't have even been out there. They should have just thrown fucking Jacoby Brissett back in these games, and the Browns would have been better. But I think even if he doesn't look like that MVP, he's still going to look like a top 12 quarterback in the National Football League. And given how good Amari Cooper has been from being a Raider to a Cowboy all the way to the Browns, again, this guy was fantastic with Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson last season. He wasn't the best with Deshaun Watson, though. I'll make that a note. But again, I think Deshaun Watson steps up, plays a lot better, and I'm ecstatic to get Amari Cooper where I can get him because I think he does have that top 12 upside. At number 16, we have Calvin Ridley of the Jacksonville Jaguars, underdog ADP, wide receiver 16 at pick 32.5. This is another player where people see him up on the board and they're shitting themselves. They're nervous. They're really nervous because Calvin Ridley hasn't played in a couple of years, right? His last season was 2021, but he only played in 5 games in 2021, so we're going to go back all the way to 2020 to see what he could do on a full season sample size. That year, with Matty Ice in Atlanta, he was the wide receiver 5 in PPR and the wide receiver 4 in PPR points per game. He played in 15 games that season, having 143 targets, 9.5 per game, number 7, 90 receptions, 6 per game, number 11, 1,374 receiving yards, 91.6 per game, number 4, and 9 total touchdowns, 9th. He was also incredibly efficient. He did have one of the most amount of drops in the NFL. He was on his Deontay Johnson shit, but that doesn't really worry me because Calvin Ridley's career in the NFL, he wasn't a guy that's just dropping the ball left and right. He was 9th in fantasy points per route run and 7th in yards per route run. This is an offense that looked amazing. This is an offense that made Christian Kirk look like a god. Now, I said this in a video previously that I really love Calvin Ridley, but people were talking about how Christian Kirk's still going to be there, and I agree. Not like Christian Kirk's going to fade away into oblivion, but this was an offense that made Christian Kirk look amazing, and Christian Kirk isn't all that great. They made Evan Ingram look amazing, and Evan Ingram isn't all that great. So I think Calvin Ridley's going to step in as the clear number 1 wide receiver. The risk with Calvin Ridley is not his skill. The guy's amazing. It is just the rust. Is he going to be rusty? Is that going to screw him over? Maybe. Maybe it takes 3-4 games for him to get back into game shape for him to look good. But he's been training. He looks good in the training camp videos. We'll see in the preseason how he looks. But I'm really excited to get the number 1 wide receiver on a Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson offense. Sounds pretty good to me. At number 17, we have the boy Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers, underdog ADP, wide receiver 21. Can you do something for me? Pick 39.9, wide receiver 40 in PPR last year, wide receiver 33 in PPR points per game, tied with Wiki, DJ Moore, Allen Lazard, and Mecole Hardman. He played in 14 games last year with 11 starts, 65 targets, 4.6 per game, number 65, 41 receptions, 2.9 per game, number 64, 611 receiving yards, 43.6 per game, number 52, and 9 total touchdowns, 4th. When this guy was given the opportunity to shine, he was stringing legendary games together. He was dropping his cock in the defense's mouth. He was putting up touchdowns. He even scored on a slant. Maybe it wasn't a slant, just off the top of my head it was a slant. He scored on a short throw from Jordan Love when Aaron Rodgers got hurt and just took it to the crib. The guy's fast. He's a great ball player. Nick, Aaron Rodgers is gone. Sure, Aaron Rodgers is gone. But that wasn't the Aaron Rodgers that we're used to last year, right? Christian Watson had the 41st best target accuracy at the wide receiver position, but he had a 102.5% true catch rate, 7th. He's a true ball player. He has the legitimate skills. He has the intangibles that a lot of wide receivers in the NFL don't have. Jordan Love, he's a young quarterback. Sure, it's his 3rd year in the NFL, 4th year in the NFL, but he hasn't played much. He hasn't gotten much run. but he's going to get that run this year. He's going to be given the opportunity, and you better believe he's going to lock on laser eyes focus to Christian Watson, the clear big dog, the clear alpha wide receiver 1 in the Green Bay Packers offense. I am elated that people continue to doubt Watson. They keep talking about, oh my God, Jordan Love, this, that, and the other thing. Don't be scared. Do I think Jordan Love is the next Rodgers, the next Brett Favre for the Packers? Probably not, right? You're not going to get 2 quarterbacks right in a row. Sure, they traded for Favre, but you get what I mean, right? You're not going to have decades, not centuries, but decades of great quarterbacks in a row. Sure, you probably won't. But is Jordan Love going to be just good enough for Christian Watson to succeed when Christian Watson's a great receiver? Yes, he is. You better believe it. Moving now to the F tier, we only have 1 wide receiver here, and that's Keenan Allen of the LA Chargers, underdog ADP, wide receiver 19 at pick 35.3. He was the wide receiver 41 in PPR last year, but the wide receiver 12 in PPR points per game, 10 games played, 88 targets, 47th, 8.9 per game, 66 receptions, 6.6 per game, number 33, 752 receiving yards, 75.2 per game, number 39, and 4 total touchdowns, 37th. He was 8th in target separation, 11th in fantasy points per route run, 19th in true catch rate, and 19th in rating per target. A lot of people like to say, I talked about this in a video recently as well, Keenan Allen's injury prone. That was true for the beginning of his career, right? The first couple of years, he was getting banged up. From 2017 to 2022, though, the guy's been pretty healthy. 2017, 6 games played. 18, 15 games played. 2019, 16 games. 2020, 14 games. 2021, 16 games played. 2022, 10 games played. Sure, only 10 games, that sucks, but it is what it is, right? Players are bound to get hurt when you're in the NFL for that long. Keenan Allen is getting disrespected right now. He's the wide receiver 19 on underdog ADP, and I believe he could finish as a top 12 receiver. Sure, they bring in Quentin Johnston at the end of the day in the NFL draft. That's not the best for Keenan Allen, but he still is that great of a player. It's not like Quentin Johnston is going to zoom past Keenan Allen and just suck up all those targets. It's not going to happen. Keenan Allen is still that guy. I think he still has at least 1 more year of being a really great wide receiver. Moving now, and the reason why I have him actually in the F tier alone is I didn't feel like I am fully 100% confident in Keenan Allen as I am with guys like Watson, Ridley, and Cooper. But I also didn't want to jam these other wide receivers that I have below him in the same tier as him because I definitely feel more confident in Keenan Allen compared to them. So we move to the G tier. We move to the G spot. Hard to find. We got wide receivers 19 and 20, DK Metcalf and Deebo Samuel. DK of the Seahawks, wide receiver 15 on underdog ADP, pick 28.8. Wide receiver 16 in PPR last year, 26 in PPR points per game. He played in 17 games, 141 targets, 8.3 per game, number 11. 90 receptions, 5.3 per game, number 10. 1,048 receiving yards, 61.6 per game, number 15. And 6 total touchdowns, 20th. Some people are going to make the argument for Keenan Allen that I'm going to make right now for DK Metcalf and why you should not like Allen. This is why I don't like the Seattle Seahawks receiver Metcalf. The kitchen is loaded with a lot of cooks. You got Metcalf. You got Lockett in my pocket. Skirt. You also got JSN, the best rookie receiver in my opinion. You got Fant. You got the other fucking tight ends that they're bound to use. You got Kenneth Walker. You got Zach Charbonnet. Metcalf with Lockett last year. Again, wide receiver 16, but he was 26 in points per game, right? He wasn't as good as you might think he was. Sure, he's a Greek god. He's built, chiseled. He's huge. He's fast as fuck, right? He's amazing. But the problem is there are so many players in Seattle, and their quarterback is not Justin Herbert, it's Geno Smith. And I like Geno for fantasy, where he's going. But let's be honest, Geno's not that amazing. He's just got a lot of people, so he's not going to suck. But he's not the best. Again, Metcalf's great. He had the second most drops. It is what it is, but 17th best route win rate, 8th in total route wins, right? He's a great receiver. It's just the situation is really gross. There's a lot of competition. I don't think Metcalf is just going to magically finish with 140 fucking targets again. I just don't see it. I really don't when it comes to DK Metcalf. He would need 10 plus touchdowns to finish inside like the top 12, and I just don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think it's crazy to say, but I'm not gonna say that. And now we got wide receiver 20, Deebo of the 49ers, another guy. too many cooks in the kitchen. Wide receiver 18, pick 34.9, but I'm not even sure Deebo is really that great. I think Metcalf's really good. I'll make that very clear. I think Metcalf's fucking amazing. I don't know if Deebo is that great, because if you look at his stats over his career, it is pretty clear that there was one outlier season. So wide receiver 37 in PPR, 28 in PPR points per game last year, tied with Hollywood Brown, underdog ADP, wide receiver 18, picked 34.9, 13 games played in 2022, 95 targets, 7.3 per game, number 37, 56 receptions, 5.3 per game, number 47, 632 receiving yards, 48.9 per game, or 48.6 per game, number 49, 5 total touchdowns, 29th. Efficiency, this guy was not efficient at all. Not good. 35.4% route win rate, 82nd. 1.57 target separation, 75th. 75.7% true catch rate, 88th. He suffered humongous touchdown regression from 2022 2021. 2022, this bastard had 2 touchdowns receiving 3 rushing touchdowns. That's 5. 2 plus 3, 5. 2021, 6 receiving touchdowns, 8 rushing touchdowns, 14 touchdowns. He almost scored triple the amount of touchdowns in 2021 as he did in 2022. And then you look at the rest of his career, and he's not printing touchdowns. So let me just talk about this. Again, Deebo, I kind of shit on him. I'm not sold that he's as great as DK Metcalf, but he's not a bad receiver by any means. And I hope that's kind of the takeaway here. But look, the touchdowns are not going to be there. He's not going to be rushing the ball as much because they have Christian fucking McCaffrey. So what's to love about Deebo? What's to love about him? They have Ayuk. They have Deebo. They have George Kittle. And they have Christian fucking McCaffrey. Why in the fuck would Deebo Samuel be getting all these rushes? Why is Deebo Samuel, why are people getting down on their knees and giving this guy the gawk 9,000 to where he's wide receiver 18? He's not that guy. He's not. He's not. Is he going to have some good games because he's a great player? Or a good player? Yeah. Is he going to have great games because he's on a great offense? Yeah. Is he going to be consistent? Fuck no, baby. And I don't think he's going to even be that great this year. I hope Big Cock Brock's the quarterback. That would help Deebo a ton. But if it's Trey Lance, you better run. You better run away from Deebo Samuel. I'd be way more scared to draft Deebo if Lance is the quarterback. And I don't even love him. And I think Big Cock Brock's going to be the quarterback. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below as well as hit that like button. Let me know if you guys differentiate in any way in the comment section. Do you think Deebo is going to be the next Randy Moss? Let me know. I love you guys all so much. Make sure you guys check out Underdog again. Link down below in the video description. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great guys' day. And as always, good boy.